I love Missoula because I feel comfortable here. And my grandparents have been here since the 50s. We moved in and kind of thinking of possibly buying something, and then the pandemic hit and that kind of threw everything out. The previous landlords had a company come through and assess. A few months later, we get a notice.
Montana is an amazing place to live, and a lot of people want to call Montana home. Before COVID, that was happening. COVID really accelerated that migration, and that's putting a lot of upward pressure on housing price.
In 2021, the rental vacancy was 0.5% in Missoula, so very, very low. It was very hard for renters. And now low-income folks or folks who want to age in place struggle to meet the needs of homeownership.
When we started 25 years ago, we could provide a $1,500 down payment assistance loan, and that would fill the gap for an individual or a family who was trying to get into homeownership. The reality now is it takes $50,000 or $100,000 to fill those gaps.
We've seen in the last 10 years the area median income go up 59%, and housing costs have risen 158%. Housing is a basic human right, and so when people don't have that secured or stable, things are really uncertain, and it's very destabilizing.
I was literally moving my stuff in. A couple came and knocked on my door and were like, "Hey, did you know this place is being sold?" I mean, there's some people here that were genuinely concerned of trying to move, people with kids that were like, "I don't know where I would go."
There's 5 of us, my husband Jake and I, my daughter Chloe, who is now 12, my daughter Mackenzie, who is 10, and my son Bryson, who is 6. We were thinking we were going to move in with my parents and maybe even moving out of Montana. My whole family's here, so leaving would have been very emotional.
That's where NMCDC came in and said, "Hey, here's the realistic way of doing this is co-op."
The North Missoula Community Development Corporation, or the NMCDC, got its start in the 90s helping people buy their homes using down payment assistance. Pretty early on, we learned about the Community Land Trust model, or the CLT model, and started implementing it in Missoula. And in this model, we buy the land underneath homes and hold it in trust on behalf of the community. And this means that generations of buyers only pay for the home itself, lowering the cost significantly because they're not paying for the land. Community land trust homeownership should really be thought of as a resource in the same way that we think about a trail system being preserved by a conservation land trust, like it's a community good in the same way. We heard from Melissa Bangs, who's a Northside neighbor, longtime Northsider. She had learned that the buildings next door to her were up for sale, and she was friends and is friends with all those folks that lived there and was really concerned that they were going to be displaced as a result of the sale. So she brought together NMCDC, Neighborworks Montana, her father, who's a sort of semi-retired real estate developer, and we kind of just all started brainstorming about what we could possibly do to prevent the displacement of these residents.
I knew about the Wolf Avenue property because my daughter lived right next door to it for 15 years. And one day, my daughter called me up and said, "Hey, Dad, they're going to put that building next door on the market. And if it sells, my friends are going to be on the street because the rents are going to go up dramatically if they sell it to an average buyer of an apartment building who wants max rent and they're not concerned about anything else." She said, "We just can't let that happen." So I knew that we were on a voyage.
As a housing provider in Missoula, we sort of have a moral responsibility to provide reasonable, safe, affordable housing in town, and you work to that end after a while. Little things, it's 4 places here or 10 places there where this will work.
So Melissa's dad, Colin, purchased the buildings and agreed to just hold on to them while we get something figured out with the tenants, and that was huge. It allowed us to have the time that we needed to really build the model, evaluate how we wanted to do this, and evaluate what the tenants' needs were. It was really the residents of Wolf Avenue Collective that led our 2 organizations towards this idea of having a housing co-op on top of community land trust land. So in our version of this model, the NMCDC comes in as the community land trust, and we purchase and hold the land in perpetuity. And the residents, as a cooperative, own the building. This results in a really affordable option for each household.
Housing in Missoula is changing and in a way that it's probably not reversible. And so I think that folks will be wanting a more creative solution or something else that gives them that stability, but also gives them some freedom and flexibility.
And that's where Neighborworks Montana came in.
The partnership between NMCDC and Neighborworks Montana is a great example of two organizations leveraging their strengths to do something that wouldn't have otherwise been possible. NMCDC has land trust experience, and they have an incredible role and connection to the Missoula community. Neighborworks Montana has experience with resident cooperatives and access to financing.
I think the model of cooperative housing really brings us back to the beginnings of our organization. For neighbors on the north side really wanting to have investment to see folks stay in the community and have that opportunity and access to be able to stay.
This is my unit in the Wolf Avenue Collective. We are a co-op here in Missoula that came into its existence last year. I've always been interested in and passionate about housing issues, especially in my hometown of Missoula, and seeing things change from when I rented here 10 years ago. Definitely feel really grateful, and that is part of the inspiration I use to do this work.
We were excited, given our roots on the north side, to establish the first limited equity housing co-op in the north side neighborhood in this really cool historic building. However, we think this model should be used in all neighborhoods. Having everyday people living in all parts of our city is really essential to creating thriving communities. Which is why we were so thrilled that the second housing cooperative looked really different from Wolf Avenue and formed across town in the River Road neighborhood.
The cooperative contains 14 different units, different homes, right off of River Road. Some of them are duplexes, some of them are manufactured homes, and there's a few single-family homes as well.
We are at my home on Hendrickson, and we are getting a new roof. We're going down our list, figuring out what's priority, getting everything updated that's needed updated for quite some time, so it feels pretty good to be able to get it done. Before the co-op purchased this property, we had property inspections done to really make sure, the full gamut of, are they gonna need to replace roofing or windows or electric, all those sorts of quality of living things. And it's really exciting that in their first 3-4 months of ownership as a collective, that multiple roofs of the buildings here have been replaced for the first time in 20-some, 30-some years.
I grew up in Missoula, Montana. Started working about 24 years ago in green building. Green building in a way has gotten a reputation as being something that is either super folksy or passive house or a net zero build. The truth is, if we take these design things and bring them to the working class folks that make up our community, affordable housing build projects can be green projects. In fact, they're the ones that usually have the smaller carbon footprint.
Definitely not something that I would put much work into if I was just renting, because it's going to somebody else, making somebody else's property look great. So now that it's ours, definitely putting more work into it. My 3 children, they're happy that they get to stay here. My son has never lived anywhere else but here.
This is how tall I will be with skates. I'm in 4th grade when I wear these.
And the fact that they get to express themselves in their room, we've painted the room, so they're happy that they don't have just white walls anymore, so they're definitely happier.
I kind of chose the blue because it's a little more toned down, and I feel like more muted colors make it cozier in here. So I play guitar, clarinet, trumpet, keyboard, and drum set, which is in the garage. Kind of like rock, metal, loud. I don't think Mackenzie likes it very much because of how different it is from her music.
So they're mostly all albums. Speak Now, Folklore, Midnights, 1989, Lover, Swiftie, and Antihero. My cat, Maddie, or Madison, she kind of sings with me most of the time.
I think me really knowing that we were going to own the house is when we started talking about remodeling and changing a bunch of things. I remember just being super excited finding out I can paint.
I've seen a lot of community response around having concern that the residents aren't going to care for the place. It's been interesting to watch two groups of neighbors go through this process because I think in both cases you can see the sort of pride that they take in their living space once they know that there's no chance that they'll be displaced because they own it.
So this building is roughly 100 years old, so a lot of the electrical was outdated. Part of my morning routine actually was like sliding a power strip like from my bedroom to the living room to like plug in anything three-pronged, so I'm looking forward to that not being a part of my routine anymore.
I feel like the concern that co-op shareholders won't be able to take care of their homes very well often comes from homeowners who own their homes and know how much work it is. But it's really different because in the co-op model, they get to rely on each other. Really, the co-op members are almost better positioned because they're operating collectively. We're here at Missoula Organization of Realtors head office. We're ready to go spread the word of what we can do. That's how we got the second project. A property management company that was working on Wolf Avenue Collective let us know about a willing seller for Neighborworks Co-op. Making these connections and spreading more awareness and getting people excited is the way that we're going to find the next one.
Great group to present to, especially now that we've shown it can work, and hopefully we'll identify another property with their help.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for the great attendance today. If you look at the progression around getting to self-sustain, there's a variety of different buckets that you could put housing into. So I added one called Pathways to Ownership, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is a co-op model or land trust model in that second to last column.
So these are our two co-ops, Wolf Avenue Collective, which is on the north side, and then Neighborworks Co-op, which is in River Road neighborhood. And just a little bit of background of how we kind of arrived at this model.
Yeah, it was great to be able to show people that this is happening in Missoula, but also we have a long history of resident ownership across the state and so much potential for housing cooperatives. In order for these projects to work, we have to have willing sellers, and there have to be properties that are a good fit. So it's that combination of a property and a group of residents, and that takes a lot of conversations and a lot of people in the community knowing what we're doing to find the right fit. With the difference between Wolf Ave and Neighborworks, we've seen that we can apply this model into different types of housing with different groups of people, and there's a lot of potential for how that model could be used in other places.
So we just heard about a new potential project just by word of mouth, and so we just go and knock doors and ask the residents of these two properties to a resident meeting to learn more about possibilities. This is really exciting because it might become the next limited equity housing co-op in Missoula. Our primary goal tonight is to review the financials and see what questions you have. We're throwing a lot of information at people, and there's always going to be really good questions, and I think that speaks to just like the knowledge that's already in the community before we even step foot there. Like, they know their community, they know their home.
It is a complicated transaction. We're working on a complex real estate transaction at the same time as we're supporting residents in forming a corporation. So there's a lot of moving parts. But ultimately, part of our role is to make that simple for everyone.
I'm glad we're talking numbers because I have questions about where the money goes and where the pot of money is and who the treasurer or the bursar is and all that. I moved to Missoula full of hope that I would find a little home to buy. I lived here before and I owned a home. And I thought, oh, I'll rent for a while. And then COVID happened less than a year later. And there's no way I can afford to buy anything now. I'm hoping that my little dog and I can stay in our home. And then when we're gone, the home can go to the next people who need it.
Should we introduce Amanda?
Yeah. At our last board meeting, Hannah had mentioned that they were meeting up with some more people, and I just kind of was like, hey, if you need somebody to come talk to that's been in there, I'd love to tell people about it and get people in on it because I think it's a great experience. We're all really happy with it. The decisions we get to make that affect ourselves and our neighbors, bringing everybody's homes up to code. I don't have to worry about if we're going to get that 30-day notice that we're going to have to move. I get to breathe easy now.
Everybody knows that we have a housing problem. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by that and they don't know where to start. And having a positive model that's working That's meeting the needs of people who really are often left without any other option. It's hopeful, and it's creating a meaningful change that people really understand.
So what you need today is show of hands, who's in, who'll do the board? Yep. Well, I'm in. Good, good.
Just like the evolution over the course of an hour from what am I being invited to when they're leaving, like I'm in, you know, that feels really special and really exciting. And I think hearing from folks who've already been through the process was really helpful for folks who are just now getting involved.
My dream for Missoula, it would be more co-ops, because I know a lot of Missoulians that have been here for a long time, the price of stuff is pushing them out, so you can come together as a group of neighbors.
We're really excited to continue this. We really are excited to learn from other cities that are already doing this and doing this successfully, and we're excited to share this so that hopefully there's more co-ops around Montana as well, and it's not so much of a new and novel experience.
It's so person-centered, right? It's going to tenants and saying, hey, this thing's gonna happen and your housing might be sold, and do you have any interest in protecting your housing? Like, it just feels like kind of unstoppable.
When Neighborworks Montana first started doing this work 25 years ago, we found ourselves making the case to the broader community about why housing is important and why housing affordability is important. We don't have to make that case anymore. Everyone understands that affordable, accessible, attainable, stable housing is critical for our communities to thrive.
You coalesce around your own scenario. Bring your core group of people that you live by anyway, and you just bring them into the fold and you say, hey, let's just do this together. Let's be adults about this. Just the peace of mind alone, to know that you're in charge of your own destiny. It's kind of nice to not have that uncertainty anymore.